Hi, folks. I just thought I'd take a look at something. What you're looking at here is issue 212 of The Amazing Spider-Man. I remember when I picked this up in Vancouver. I was 10 years old, and it was November 1980. Living just off the Kingsway a bit there. I don't know what street that was. I was getting around to checking the maps, Google, and for these old addresses. But anyway, that's not so important. What is important is this very issue was like the first, I remember, issue of the comics that I had been collecting that I started actually reading cover to cover. And at that very time, I should say, perhaps 2 weeks before I picked this up off the shelf at the local convenience store, I remember I had picked up a stack of issues 190 to about 204, 206, something like that, from a neighbor. And so I'd go on to read this and 213 and 14. And around 214, 215, I said, well, wait a minute, I ought to back up and read these other issues that I had. It's funny how you remember these things. But what I really wanted to talk about is I thought at first, well, this was going to be a message to Gen Z and millennials who might not know. But I don't think that's really fair. I think it's true that a lot of people don't know this. Now, sometimes when people want to do a flip through or they want to showcase an issue, they want to discuss something, perhaps they wanted to take that trip down memory lane, like I was attempting to do there, or they want to actually discuss the artist and the writer that's involved there. Well, we might as well touch upon it. That's a John Romita cover, and he had been doing the Spider-Man covers and interior in place of Keith Pollard previously in late 79 and 80, right, and was now working on, now it was John Romita Jr. I remember those two names. I remember John Romita Jr. popping out, right, but not really paying too much attention to the names per se. Here I go again. The thing I want to point out is that when people are doing the flip throughs or they're presenting a certain issue that's special to them or whatever, here's what they often do. Or if they're doing comic book history, they'll say, for example, like this was November 1980, I picked up this issue, right? But they'll look at the cover and they'll say, wow, it says January. See that? Right under the issue number, January, right? And we got the Curtis circulation thing there. That's great. And right here it says Curtis circulated 1980. But that's not true. This is not it is a 1980 issue, but that January does not represent January 1980, which would have been a year before. It actually represents the takedown date, where, if you're not familiar, issues usually came out 2 to 3 months previous. The date shown was usually 3 months ahead, basically stating that's when you get the issue off the shelf. Its display date is what you're looking at when you see that here. So don't be mistaken as to think that it's January 1980. No, nowhere close. That's actually a year ago. And in fact, oftentimes what you can do, if you want to be sure, you just flip this open and you'll see in the indicia, right down here at the bottom of the page, it will say, there we go, number 212, January, right? But in the indicia, it will say 1981. 1981. So that's right. You see, and because it's 3 months, Always remember that when you're going back and looking at Bronze Age or even in mid 80s, whatever, when you're talking 3 months back, always remember that when you get to the months January, February, and March, you're usually talking about a December issue or earlier from the previous year. But because I guess I don't know why. Well, it does make sense that it would say 1980, because although this was put on the shelf in November 1980, it's still 1980, so to speak, but it wouldn't be January 1980. That January is for 1980. I think you get the point. Anyway, it's a simple enough mistake to make, but when dealing with January, February, or March, you're usually talking about the previous year, right? Meaning it would be that year. So they put it there, but it's not necessarily that January, February, March is not necessarily indicating that particular year. It's usually indicating, if it's saying January, March, or April, you'll find it in the indicia. Usually. I'd like to say 100%, but sometimes they fuck it up too, and they overlook that. But anyway, yeah, it was an important issue. It was one of the first that I'd read cover to cover. I would read my issues here sporadically, piece by piece and stuff. Wasn't very disciplined until I started getting into it. And then, it would be, that following summer, I'd become 11, and then I was entrenched in the stuff, right? And collecting took on a whole new meaning for a little kid then. Yeah, so there. I just wanted to straighten that out because I see that oftentimes that doesn't happen. A person will simply indicate, like there's I don't want to name names because then people will be there bombarding the guy saying, you're making a mistake here and there. There's oftentimes the guy will get up there and he'll go directly. He'll say direct, he'll use the month that's seen on the cover and the year, which aren't necessarily conducive when you're talking about January, February, March. I think that's the point, but it's happening a lot out there, and I just want to put that out there for some of the guys doing it, that, I don't know. I've thought about commenting on some of their pages saying, the January, February, March usually is indicating, it's not the year on the cover, but they have to put the, I guess the arrival date, like which in this case, which was November. I remember it. I remember walking down there getting it, but November, and it would be conducive to that year. Not this January would not be conducive to that year. I think I'm starting to repeat myself, but anyway, there's that. So people that are doing future videos, especially when they're flipping through Bronze Age stuff or, right up to, I don't know how far you'd want to go with that, late 80s or whatever. I'm not even sure. I'd have to go and check my issues myself to find out how long that kind of thing went on, the 3-month barrier thing with the takedown dates and that. But you might want to consider that when you're presenting a video because it can be misleading. Someone will go looking for the issue and assuming it's a year, it's going to cause arguments. No, it isn't. See, it's January 1980. Right there, it says so. Yes, but you back up. That means November 1980. And that January, if it was the true January 1980, it would actually be like, you probably have a 79 on the on the block, on the title block there. What would you call that? The character block, whatever. So yeah. Just wanted to clear that up. I was going to say, well, who really cares? But I think some of the guys that are making these presentations would care and would want to get that right. Okay? So there's that.